guys, today I'd like to take you on a tour of my new studio. This is in a rental property, and if you didn't see some of my other studio setup videos, basically we can't put new holes in the walls, so we're kind of limited with what we can do. But I think we were able to do a lot with a little, and I'm looking forward to showing it to you guys today, so keep watching. Okay, so this is the view from the hallway. And this is the room that we're going to be using as a workspace and a studio. And it's fairly small. I think it's really designed for one person, but I think we might try to share it. So over here is Joseph's side of the studio. We have lots of shelves. We have really big cabinets. I'll actually open this one and show you guys what I mean. So these are perfect for storing paper and art supplies. They're really nice and deep. And the cabinets even have little shelves on them, which is pretty handy. So out this door, we have a small porch. The door doesn't shut on its own properly. So right out here, we have some really beautiful nature to enjoy, which is nice for when you get oversaturated with making art or solving problems. It also means we can open the blinds and let a little bit of sunlight in without it getting too hot in here. I'm a direct sunlight kind of gal, and while this rental home does have a lot of direct sunlight, not every room has as much light as every other room. So we definitely spent a lot of time adding and changing the lights in here, which I have a whole studio setup video if you're interested in that and the thought process behind that. Today I just want to focus on kind of taking you guys on a tour of my workspace. So this is where most of the magic is going to happen. So since this is a smaller space, my printers, my scanner, those are all in another bedroom that's larger. So this is really just a dedicated workspace. If I were to go back to painting watercolor comic pages in batch, I would have to do that in another room other than this one because it's just not really large enough. So we have to be careful because these are wood floors and they're easily damaged. But you guys see my desktop. This is a Futura drafting table. It was a graduation gift from my mom about 10 years ago. It has traveled 4 states now, back to Louisiana, so I guess technically 3. It's moved many times, and I'm trying to keep it pretty simple here. So on top of the glass tabletop, we have Teflon, and this is great for a number of reasons. It's easy to clean up, it doesn't reflect the light as strongly, and it's also a nice white surface for recording, so it's going to make for nice recording quality. We have a number of lights. So some of these are actual like daylight lights and daylight bulbs, and some of them are lamps that just have bright white bulbs in them, like the LED bulbs you can get at like Walmart. But I wanted lots of lighting coming from a variety of light sources so that we don't get too many harsh shadows. Now ideally we would have a light right there as well, but can't do that. So we did the best we could, including a homemade light wall, and I have a tutorial where I kind of walk you how to make that. We also have my Rode mic stand, and I use this to hold my phone when I'm recording actually. And you see here, I have an F-clamp. I use this often with the Rode mic. You also see my speakers as well as my webcam, or one of 3 webcams. And those are useful in doing live streams and art streams with you guys, and I look forward to resuming those. You guys see I have a brush holder here, and I'm trying to reserve as much desk space as I can. If you guys have seen some of my prior studio tours back in Nashville, my desk space really got encroached upon, so I'm trying to leave it as open and clear as possible. We also have an LED ring light that I recently reviewed. And then over here we have my monitor. It used to be a wall-mounted monitor, but can't do that here. So it is a table mounted monitor, and this is just a TV table that I used to use in Nashville. It works well enough as a side table. It's not as large as my other side table, and it's already getting kind of cluttered, but it'll do. And we see another webcam, and we're still kind of figuring the webcam situation out. I don't think that's going to work because it's basically pointed at the ceiling. Doesn't really work. In the pencil tray, I haven't had much of a chance to populate it yet. We've got my keyboard, we've got my thumb drives, and then I also have some organizers, and I also have demo keys as a fidget. Then underneath is my desktop. Joseph built that. A really large uninterrupted battery backup, so in case we lose electricity, my computer isn't going to just die. And then we have the first of many organizers, and this one contains inking supplies, watercolor supplies, and rulers and guides, although I'm probably going to get rid of the rulers and guides because I don't use those that often now. Underneath the desk, we have a handmade calligrapher's bridge. This was a gift from Joseph. And normally I keep my rulers and my light table and my Intuos under the table as well. They're still all packed up, so they're not out yet, but the bridge is out. And then over here we have, so what's in the bucket is stuff I still need to review. I have a gallon of distilled water because I found that painting in Louisiana, I often get muddy colors if I use tap. And then we have my Prismacolor markers, my Letraset markers, my Winsor & Newton Pro markers, and then Mexby and Shinhan Twin Touch under there. And then over here, we have my throne, my Aeron. And this thing, I mean, they're expensive, but I think it's worth its weight in gold because it has saved me so many doctor's visits and so many back problems. And then over here in this cabinet and set of shelves is where most of my art supplies live, and this is still a work in progress, kind of workshopping it while I figure out what works best for me and where everything's gonna go. So over here we have a series of drawers. These are from the Container Store, and they're all like individual modular units with little drawers in them. And I really like these for my alcohol and Copic markers. They're all sold individually, so you can add on to this as you want, but they are like 20 bucks a piece. So I originally started with 3, and then I had 4, and now I have 6. And some of them also contain like alcohol inks or all my black and colorless blenders since I review alcohol markers, or over here are all of my Neo Pico and Curicolor skin tones, or even like some post-it notes. So they're not just great for art supplies like Copic markers or pencils, they're also just good for like general miscellaneous art supplies. Then up here we have color pencils and watercolor pencils. These two big binders, I think I reviewed them as pencil cases here on the channel in the past. This one contains my favorite watercolor pencils, and this one contains my favorite color pencils. And then I have some Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencils, which are India ink based, and then I have some Polychromos color pencils. Then over here are like my colored brush pins. So I have Pintel brush pins in here. I have Copic, and I think it's mostly Copic. Whoa! Brush pins in there with like the Sakura pink and the lavender and the sepia colors. And I also have some Tombow Furinosuke brush pins, the colored brush pins over in this tray right here. I really like those because they are alcohol and waterproof, so almost anything I make, they're good for. Then up here we have watercolor markers. So I have the Albrecht Dürer watercolor markers, the Winsor & Newton watercolor markers, Ecoline watercolor markers, more Winsor & Newton, And then over here I have adhesives, so like glue dots, mono, aqua, Scotch double stick tape. Over here are the chameleon color changing fine liners. And then over here I have pit pins and some marker boxes. Up here I have the Karen watercolor markers, my long arm stapler for zines, and then a couple of fans that I haven't had a chance to draw yet. So Bowcat has demanded to go outside. So I'll show you guys one of the other big features of this studio. He would just stand in the door forever. There he goes. So over here, things are still a little bit chaotic, still figuring this out. I have my new brush cups, and what's nice about these is they have really sturdy bottoms so that Bowie can't just knock them over. And I sort my brushes by natural and synthetic fibers, and then in the bathroom, I have a black cup and a blue cup to designate dirty brushes and clean brushes. I also have kind of a catch-all tray that I need to go through better. Battery backups, the remote controls that my lights are on, and I'll show you guys how that works in a minute, but it's really handy, especially if you've got as many lights as I have here in this studio. A little bit of candy that I'm using as reference for a piece later on. My happy planner, which needs a better home than just on top of my Copics. My watercolor palettes, there's some ceramic ones, there's some plastic ones. This isn't even all of my watercolor palettes. It's just the ones I use the most. And then over here is like in progress stuff. So like I'm working on a Marie's Professional Chinese watercolor field test, using it for a Western style of watercolor. So this is all together. And then all of these watercolor pads have existing art on them that I need to finish. Up here, I have mostly my recording equipment. So this is a box of different mounts, including my gimbal, as well as some lenses for my camera. And this is a gooseneck clamp that I've been using a lot recently because it gives me a nice secondary angle that I can use in videos. Up here are my watercolor paints. These are not necessarily the ones I use the most. I actually keep the ones I'm using the most right under my desk for easy access. But it's all stuff I'm going to be using in the near future. And then up here is more recording equipment. So my camcorder, my mic, my camera, an extra webcam, my shotgun mic. And then way up here where I can't really reach is stuff I don't need that often. So still organizing this. Still getting this figured out, but it'll definitely get there. My biggest problem is like this desktop area right here is a little bit too chaotic to really facilitate using this space right here. Now these shelves are adjustable. I could make them taller if I need them, but I'm short. So I like having most things within easy reach so I don't have to, like, you know, haul a step ladder up, climb the step ladder, get my stuff, put the step ladder back. It's easy for me to get a hold of. Part of the tour is probably one of the hardest to record because it's difficult to get an angle on these. So these are my cabinets. Well, they came with the house, but the cabinets that hold my stuff in them. And as you guys can probably see, I'll move the camera just a little bit so you can see. I can't get the other door open all the way because it does bump into the desk. This is a small space-ish for an artist, but I've worked in much smaller, and I know people who have worked in much smaller. This is way bigger than my dorm room was for most of undergrad. So this is mostly, this half is stuff I'm going to use often, and this half is stuff I'm not going to use as often. In fact, some of it is probably going to remain in boxes for a while. But over here, I have my chameleon markers and the color tops, as well as some erasable pencils and some sign boards. Next to it, I have watercolor sketchbooks and larger cellulose pads. And then over here, I have my watercolor tubes that I use when I refill my palettes. And these are organized, but I don't necessarily feel like taking them out right now. So this is a huge art bin full of half pans, as you guys can see. Not half pans, full of tubes of watercolor. That's funny because I'm going to be pulling this out later for another video, so maybe I'll hold off and actually give you a tour of all my watercolors in a bit. And then down here is more watercolor paper, cotton rag and samples that people have sent me, pads of paper, and then larger pads of paper. I paint a lot, so I have a lot of watercolor paper. So one of the other nice things about this setup, it being kind of small, is I can actually get camera angles all over the place, which is kind of cool because I felt really static and tied to just one angle. And I wanted to show you guys the lights because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then the ceiling lights have been replaced with natural lights of 7, and then there's a big OT light in the back over there. So 8 lights in here, and I have more natural lights if needed. But we hook them up on a remote like this. Not all of them go off at the same time, and this one being USB based, you have to turn it back on manually, but it's still pretty neat, so watch. And that's actually pretty simple to set up. You just need these, and honestly one of those Squid style extension cables where they kind of splay out. I have one right down there. I don't know if you guys can see it, so that way you're not trying to chunk these big things all in this too tight space. These are pretty great. So it's actually not that hard to set up your lights on a remote. What would be cool too is to have like a dramatic lighting light, but that's probably going to be a later project. I'm not sure if this is the best angle ever for this, but experimenting, trying new things, taking risks. So this is my current paint box. It contains my watercolor tubes, and I don't think I have anything that isn't professional grade in here. I keep all of that kind of stuff sort of separate. So this is stuff that I like to paint with. And up here I have like wax crayons, I have a graphite for graphite transfers, I have a rubber cement pickup, I have some half pans, but I also keep a lot of half pans in this like drawer thing. And since this was moved, it's not as neat and tidy as it was, so excuse me while I freshen it up a little bit. And over the years on this channel, I've reviewed several different brands of watercolors, so that's partially why I have such a large collection, is I've been collecting it for a long time. I also don't really buy a lot of other stuff. I used to read most of my comics through the library, and I don't really buy like DVDs or like stuff that much anymore. So down here is Daniel Smith, some M-grams, Winsor Newton. Down here is Holbein and more M-grams. And then down here is Sennelier. Although there's some core tubes in there. So I'll fix that. And speaking of core, also core. And since there's some core tubes up here, I'll go ahead and put what I can't. Oh, you got stuck. That's a problem with moving too, is sometimes things leak. Yeah, I got it. That's Pyro Orange being stubborn there. And it's about time for me to get a different box for my core, because they've kind of overtaken the whole place. And it is their box, so I guess they can do what they want. But now I think I need to tape it. One of the other nice things about tube watercolors is all of these are used, but they last a lot longer than half pans, so you can kind of amass a collection. Ah, there's my masking fluid. I need to put that on my desk. I'm glad I found it. I was about to order some more. I'll go ahead and put the masking fluid pickup with it. With a big clasp, and then I don't really know what these handles are for on the sides because they don't hold brushes, and I mean, like, maybe they could, and they don't, like, you can't lock this one. That's my other problem. And this is believe it or not, this is a Frederick sticker that I got free at a Hands-On Creativity. So anyway, those are my paints. Alright, so that's basically it. That is my moving situation studio. So we're renting this place while we look for, well, we're looking to buy a permanent home. So I'm really looking forward to having kind of like the studio space of my dreams. Even if it takes a while to get there, I'm definitely looking forward to being able to have like a hutch around my table and have it like with glass facing doors, stuff like that, so that things can be up and organized but also still accessible and viewable. So that's a good someday dream, and we're definitely moving in that direction. This space is definitely a big improvement on how I handled the space in Nashville, which was just a bedroom with one window and it was on the other wall. So thank you guys for exploring my interim studio with me. I really look forward to getting back to making art and sharing that with you guys, and also having regularly scheduled live streams. And I'm also looking forward to finishing up 7-inch Cara Volume 2. Of course, having a place to work is really important to actually working, especially when you work in traditional media. So if you guys have any questions, if you want to know what anything is, or if you want to look at something a little bit more in depth, let me know in the comments below. I also want to point out, I know the audio is really, really bad. I think I've explained this in another video, but having like egg crate up on the walls or just anything to kind of diffuse that sound would help a lot. It's because there's so many hard surfaces, they bounce the audio back at you. So I'm aware that the audio is not really the best, and I'm going to explore some non-invasive, non-punch holes in the wall solutions to improving the audio. I have some ideas, so fingers crossed I can make those work, and they'll work out the way I actually think they will. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching. It was a joy to share this with you. We've been working on it for about a week, and I'm really glad that it's come together as nicely as it did. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye guys!